Now let's begin. The satellite phone crackled in Clayton Huff's ear as he crouched behind the crumbling wall of a compound in Kabul. Dust coated his tactical gear, and the Afghan sun beat down mercilessly on the back of his neck. 18 years in CIA Black Ops had taught him to recognize every sound. The shuffle of enemy boots, the click of a safety being released, the whisper of wind through empty corridors. But nothing had prepared him for the sound of his daughter's voice, fractured and terrified. "Daddy." Charlotte's voice was barely a whisper, thick with tears and pain. Clayton's blood turned to ice. She never called him during operations. She knew the rules. Emergencies only, and only through the secure line his ex-wife Graciela kept hidden in their kitchen drawer. "Charlie, baby, what's wrong?" "Uncle Mike." Her voice broke into a sob. "You broke my arm, Daddy. It hurts so bad. Mom won't take me to the hospital. She says I'm being dramatic, but I can see the bone." The phone clattered, and he heard her retching. His hands tightened around the phone until his knuckles went white. "Where's your mother right now?" "Passed out on the couch. She and Uncle Mike were drinking. I asked him to stop yelling at her, and he grabbed me and twisted my arm," and another sob. "Daddy, please. I'm scared." Clayton looked at his watch. He was 6,300 miles from his daughter, overseeing an asset extraction that couldn't be postponed. His team depended on him. But the small, broken voice on the phone was his entire world, the one pure thing that had survived his divorce, his career, his compromises. "Charlie, listen to me very carefully. Go to your room. Lock the door. I'm going to get someone there right now." He was already moving, signaling to his second-in-command, Leonard Allen, to take over the operation. Leonard nodded without question. They'd worked together long enough that words weren't necessary. Clayton moved to a secure corner, pulling up his contacts. Brett Walton answered on the second ring. "Talk to me. I need you in McLean. My daughter's address." "How fast can you get there?" Brett didn't hesitate. 20 minutes, maybe 25 with traffic. "Make it 15. Mike Hamilton broke my daughter's arm. Graciela's drunk. Won't help her. Don't let him leave the house." There was a pause. When Brett spoke again, his voice was flat, professional. "Understood. What's the limit?" Clayton thought of Charlotte's voice, the terror in it, the pain. He thought of Graciela, his ex-wife, who'd chosen her brother over their daughter's safety. He thought of Mike Hamilton, the parasitic brother-in-law who'd been a cancer in his family for 5 years, ever since the divorce. "No limit. Just make sure my daughter gets to a hospital first." "Copy that." Clock's running. Clayton ended the call and immediately dialed another number. "This is Huff. I need a medical team at 1847 Oakwood Drive, McLean, Virginia. 12-year-old female, compound fracture of the left radius. Mother is incapacitated, potential substance abuse involvement. Priority 1. He gave them the access codes that would ensure Charlotte received the best care available. No questions asked, billed to his classified account. Then he called his commanding officer. "Sir, I need immediate extraction. Family emergency." There was a pause. "Huff, we're in the middle of. My daughter's in danger. Allen can handle the op. I trained him myself. But I need to be on the next bird out of here, or I'm walking to the airport." The silence stretched. Clayton had never requested early leave, not in 18 years. Never complained, never faltered. He was the agency's best, cold, efficient, and utterly reliable. His commander knew that if Clayton Huff said he needed to leave, he needed to leave. Approved. There's a transport leaving Bagram in 90 minutes. Be on it. Brett Walton made it to the Hamilton house in 17 minutes, running 2 red lights and taking a corner so fast his Charger's tires screamed. He'd known Clayton since their first year at the farm, the CIA's training facility. They'd been partners for 12 years before Brett took a bullet in Belgrade that ended his field career and pushed him into domestic intelligence work. He owed Clayton his life 3 times over. The house was a modest 2-story colonial in a quiet suburb, the kind of place where neighbors minded their business and soccer moms drove SUVs. Brett parked the house down and approached on foot, his hand resting on the Glock beneath his jacket. He could see movement through the living room window, a large man pacing, agitated. Brett tested the front door. Unlocked. Amateurs. He slipped inside, his footsteps silent on the hardwood floor. The living room reeked of whiskey and cigarette smoke. Graciela Hamilton was sprawled on the couch, one arm dangling, her breathing heavy and regular. An empty bottle of Jack Daniels sat on the coffee table next to an overflowing ashtray. Mike Hamilton stood in the kitchen, his back to Brett, talking on his phone in a low, angry voice. I don't care what she told him. The brat's making it sound worse than it is. I barely touched her. Brett cleared his throat. Mike spun around, the phone clattering from his hand. He was a big man, 6'2", and heavy through the shoulders, with the soft gut of someone who'd once been athletic but had let himself go. His face was flushed, his eyes glassy with alcohol. Who the hell are you? Charlotte's father sent me. Brett kept his voice neutral, professional. I'm here to take her to the hospital. Mike's face twisted. This is my sister's house. You're trespassing. Get out before I call the cops. Go ahead. Call them. I'm sure they'd love to hear about the 12-year-old with a compound fracture upstairs. Brett took a step forward. Where is she? Mike's hand moved toward the knife block on the counter. Brett's gun was out before Mike's fingers touched the handle. Don't. Brett's voice was ice. I've had a long day, and I really don't want paperwork. But Clayton asked me to make sure his daughter gets to a hospital, and I don't fail my partner. Mike's eyes darted toward the back door. You can try, Brett said, reading the intent. But I'm faster, and I'm sober. Your choice. Mike lunged for the door. Brett had been expecting it. He fired once, the suppressed round taking Mike in the left kneecap. Mike went down screaming, clutching his leg. Brett was on him in 2 strides, zip-tying his wrists behind his back. Shut up, Brett said conversationally, or I'll do the other knee. Mike's screams reduced to whimpers. Brett left him on the floor and took the stairs 2 at a time. Charlotte's room was the second door on the left, decorated with horse posters and swimming trophies. She was huddled in the corner, her left arm cradled against her chest, her face pale and streaked with tears. Charlotte Huff. Brett kept his voice gentle, sliding his gun back into its holster. I'm Brett. Your dad sent me. We're going to get you to a hospital right now. Her eyes, the same sharp gray as her father's, focused on him with desperate hope. Is Daddy coming home? He's on his way. But first, we need to take care of that arm. Brett pulled out his phone and called the medical team Clayton had dispatched. ETA. For minutes out. Brett nodded. Charlotte, I'm going to stay right here with you until they arrive. Your uncle is downstairs. He can't hurt you anymore. Okay. She nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. He was so angry. Mom was crying because she lost her job again, and I told him to leave her alone, and he just grabbed me and twisted, and I heard it snap. Hey. Brett moved closer, careful not to touch her injured arm. You were brave to call your dad. You did exactly the right thing. Sirens approached. Brett heard the medical team entering downstairs, their professional voices assessing the situation. A paramedic, a woman with kind eyes and steady hands, appeared in the doorway. Charlotte? I'm Sarah. We're going to take care of you. As they stabilized Charlotte's arm and prepared her for transport, Brett went back downstairs. Mike was still on the floor, his leg bleeding through his jeans. Graciela had woken up, confused and disoriented, being questioned by one of the EMTs. Brett made a call. It's done. She's going to Georgetown University Hospital. Compound fracture, but the medics say she'll be fine. He tried to run. Clayton's voice was tight with controlled rage. How bad? Kneecap. He'll live. What do you want to do with him? There was a pause. Brett could almost hear Clayton thinking, calculating. Don't let the cops take him. I'll be there in 14 hours. Keep him on ice. Brett looked at Mike Hamilton, writhing on the floor, and smiled. Copy that. He's not going anywhere. Clayton spent the 14-hour flight running scenarios in his head. The C-17 transport was loud and cold, filled with pallets of equipment and a handful of exhausted soldiers heading stateside. He sat alone in the cargo bay, his go bag between his feet, his mind racing through every detail Brett had provided. Mike Hamilton. The name tasted like poison. He'd met Mike 7 years ago, shortly after he'd started dating Graciela. She'd been a pharmaceutical sales rep, beautiful and vivacious, with a laugh that could light up a room. He'd been between deployments, lonely, and she'd seemed like everything he'd been missing. They'd married within 6 months, and Charlotte had arrived a year later. The problem started when Mike lost his job at a construction company for showing up drunk. Graciela, loyal to a fault where family was concerned, had taken him in. Just temporarily, she'd promised Clayton, just until Mike got back on his feet. 3 years later, Mike was still there, a permanent fixture on their couch, drinking their beer and filling Graciela's head with resentment about Clayton's absences. The deployments that had once seemed romantic, her brave husband serving his country, became abandonment. Mike was always there, whispering poison. He doesn't care about you. He loves his job more than his family. You deserve better. Clayton had tried to make it work. He'd requested stateside assignments, taken desk work he hated, tried to be present. But the marriage was already dying, infected by Mike's constant presence and Graciela's growing dependency on alcohol. The final straw came when Clayton found out Graciela had been arrested for DUI with Charlotte in the car. Mike had been passed out in the back seat. The divorce had been brutal. Graciela's lawyer, paid for by Mike's under-the-table income from God knows where, had painted Clayton as an absent father, dangerous, unstable. The judge, swayed by Graciela's tears and promises to seek treatment, had awarded her primary custody. Clayton got Charlotte every other weekend and mandatory supervised visitation for the first 6 months. He'd fought it, spent every penny he had on appeals, but the family court system didn't care about his service record or his capabilities. They cared about stability, and a man who disappeared for months at a time in a classified operations couldn't provide that. So he'd accepted the terms, insisted on the secure phone line, and made sure Charlotte knew she could call him anytime, anywhere. He tried to shield her from the worst of Graciela's decline, always smiling during their visits, never speaking ill of her mother. Charlotte was smart enough to see the truth anyway. The plane touched down at Joint Base Andrews at 0600. Brett was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his Charger, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "How is she?" Clayton asked, foregoing greeting. "Surgery went well. Clean break, no nerve damage. They put in a plate and 6 screws. She'll make a full recovery." Brett handed him a coffee. "She's been asking for you." "And Mike?" Brett's smile was cold. "Safe house in Alexandria. 3 cracked ribs from when he resisted arrest. Funny thing about knee injuries, they really affect your balance." Clayton allowed himself a brief smile. "Anyone ask questions?" "Medical team thinks I'm FBI. Local cops were never called. I showed agency credentials, and they backed off. Graciela's in a county facility, 72-hour psychiatric hold. Her blood alcohol was 0.24. Child Services wanted to take Charlotte into foster care, but I pulled some strings. She's technically in agency protective custody, pending your arrival." Clayton nodded, processing. "What about Mike's associates? Anyone know where he is?" "That's where it gets interesting." Brett pulled out his phone, showing Clayton a series of photos. "While waiting for the medics, I did some light searching. Mike's been busy. Found these in his car, burner phones, 3 different IDs, and 40 grand in cash. Also found this." He swiped to a photo of a ledger, filled with names, dates, and dollar amounts. Clayton studied it. This is a gambling operation. Not just gambling. Mike's been running a loan sharking business on the side, targeting people in the neighborhood. Some of these names, I ran them. Single mothers, elderly folks, people who can't get legitimate credit. He's been charging 20% interest weekly. Brett's voice was tight with disgust. "There's more. Some of the women on this list have notes next to their names. Payment alternative. You can guess what that means." Clayton's jaw tightened. The coffee tasted like ash. "How long?" "Based on the dates, at least 3 years. He's been using Graciela's house as a base, taking advantage of her condition to operate freely. Some of these people have been paying him for months, trapped in debt cycles. Does Charlotte know? I don't think so. But some of these addresses, they're her classmates' families. He's been targeting people in her school community." Clayton felt something cold and dark settle in his chest. Mike Hamilton wasn't just a drunk who'd hurt his daughter in a moment of anger. He was a predator, systematically exploiting vulnerable people, using Graciela's home and her deteriorating mental state as cover for his operations. Who else knows about this? Clayton asked. Just us. I didn't file a report yet. Figured you'd want to see it first. Clayton looked at his partner, seeing the understanding in Brett's eyes. There was a decision point here, a fork in the road. He could turn everything over to proper authorities, let the system handle Mike Hamilton through legal channels. Mike would probably get a few years for the loan sharking, maybe assault charges for Charlotte's arm. He'd be out in 18 months, back on the streets, back to his old tricks. Or Clayton could handle it himself. 18 years in Black Ops had taught him how to make problems disappear. He knew how to move without leaving traces, how to exploit weaknesses, how to ensure justice was served when the system failed. I want to see him, Clayton said. After I see Charlotte. Brett nodded. I figured. Car's ready when you are. Georgetown University Hospital was quiet at this hour, the morning shift just starting. Clayton followed Brett through corridors he'd memorized on previous visits. Charlotte had broken her collarbone in a soccer game 2 years ago, back when Graciela still allowed her to play sports. Charlotte was awake, propped up on pillows, her left arm in a bright blue cast. Her face lit up when she saw him. Daddy, she tried to sit up, wincing. Clayton was at her bedside in 3 strides, carefully hugging her, mindful of her injury. Hey, baby girl. I'm here. She buried her face in his shoulder and started crying. Real sobs, the kind she'd been holding back. Clayton held her, letting her release everything, his own eyes burning with tears he wouldn't let fall. Not yet. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know you were working. I shouldn't have called. Don't you ever apologize for calling me. Ever. You're the most important thing in my life, Charlie. Nothing, and I mean nothing, is more important than you. She pulled back, wiping her eyes with her good hand. Is Uncle Mike going to come back? No. He's never coming near you again. I promise. What about Mom? Clayton hesitated. This was the delicate part. Your mom is sick, Charlie. She needs help. She's somewhere now where they're going to try to help her get better. She won't get better. Charlotte's voice was flat, adult. She tries sometimes, but Uncle Mike always brings her back down. He gives her pills and drinks with her and tells her she doesn't have a problem. Clayton's blood went cold. Pills? What kind of pills? I don't know. Little white ones. They make her sleepy and mean. Charlotte looked down at her cast. Sometimes I hear them talking at night. Uncle Mike says she owes him money for them, but she doesn't have any, so she lets him stay and she stopped, her face crumbling. Daddy, I think he's been hurting her too. I've seen bruises. Brett, standing by the door, met Clayton's eyes. The look they exchanged needed no words. This wasn't just about Charlotte's broken arm anymore. This was about a systematic pattern of abuse, exploitation, and control. Mike Hamilton had turned Graciela into an addict, dependent on him for drugs, isolated and vulnerable, unable to protect herself or her daughter. How long has this been going on? Clayton asked gently. I'm not sure. Maybe a year? It got bad after you stopped coming for your weekends. Clayton's heart broke a little. The supervised visitation had expired 6 months ago, but Graciela had made it increasingly difficult for him to see Charlotte. Canceled visits, ignored calls, manufactured emergencies. He'd suspected Mike was behind it, but he hadn't realized the extent of the manipulation. That wasn't your fault, and it wasn't because I didn't want to see you, he said firmly. Your mom and I are going to work some things out. But right now, you're coming home with me. The doctors say you'll be discharged this afternoon. We'll get your stuff from the house, and you're going to stay with me until we figure everything out. Charlotte's eyes widened. Really? For how long? As long as it takes. For the first time since he'd arrived, she smiled. A real smile, the one that reminded him why everything else in his life was secondary. This girl, this brave, intelligent, beautiful girl, was worth any sacrifice, any compromise, any dark thing he might have to do. I'll give you two some time, Brett said. I'll be outside. When they were alone, Charlotte took his hand. Daddy, what are you going to do to Uncle Mike? Clayton looked at his daughter, so much older than 12, aged by circumstances no child should face. He could lie to her, protect her from the truth. But Charlotte deserved better than lies. I'm going to make sure he can never hurt anyone again, he said. You don't need to worry about how. You just need to know that you're safe and you're going to stay safe. Can you trust me on that? She nodded. I trust you, Daddy. You've never broken a promise to me. And I never will. He stayed with her until she fell asleep, exhausted by pain medication and emotional release. Then he joined Brett in the hallway. Safe house? Clayton asked. 20 minutes from here. I've got Simon Pitts watching him. Remember Pitts from Benghazi? He owes you for pulling him out of that embassy. Clayton remembered. Pitts was solid, discreet, and had no qualms about bending rules when the situation warranted it. Let's go have a conversation with Mr. Hamilton. Brett drove, weaving through morning traffic with practiced ease. Clayton watched the city pass by, his mind already working through scenarios. Mike Hamilton had to disappear, that much was certain. But it had to be done right. No blowback on Charlotte, no trail leading to Clayton or his associates. And Mike had to know why this was happening to him, had to understand the full weight of his crimes before the end. The safe house was a nondescript apartment in a building slated for demolition, scheduled to be torn down in 3 weeks. Perfect timing. Simon Pitts met them at the door, a compact man with graying hair and sharp eyes. He's been cooperative, Simon reported. Mostly because I explained what happens to people who hurt kids where I come from. He thinks he's in FBI custody pending charges. Good. Let him keep thinking that for now. Has he said anything useful? Keeps insisting it was an accident, that the kid slipped. Got aggressive when I suggested otherwise. So I had to remind him about proper respect for authority. Simon's knuckles were bruised. Clayton nodded. Give us the room. Brett and I need to have a private conversation with our guest. Simon stepped aside, and Clayton entered the apartment's back bedroom. Mike Hamilton sat in a metal chair, his wrists zip-tied to the armrests, his injured leg elevated on a stool. His face was pale, his shirt stained with sweat and blood. When he saw Clayton, confusion flickered across his features, followed by recognition, then fear. Mike whispered, Graciella's ex. Clayton pulled up a chair and sat down across from him, his movements calm and deliberate. Brett closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. Let me tell you how this is going to work, Clayton said, his voice conversational. You're going to tell me everything. Every detail of your operation, every person you've exploited, every crime you've committed. And if you lie to me, if you try to minimize or deflect, my friend here is going to make you wish you'd been honest the first time. Mike's eyes darted between them. I want a lawyer. Clayton smiled, and it was the coldest thing in the room. Mr. Hamilton, you're not under arrest. You're not in federal custody. You're in a place that doesn't exist, talking to people who were never here about crimes that are about to become irrelevant. He leaned forward. I'm going to give you one chance to make this easier on yourself. Cooperate fully, and when this is over, it'll be quick. Fight me, and I promise you'll beg for quick before the end. Mike's face went white. You can't. This is illegal. I've spent 18 years doing illegal things in service of my country, Clayton said. I've enhanced interrogations in black sites, eliminated targets in countries where we technically aren't operating, and made problems disappear in ways that would keep you up at night. The difference is, I did those things for something bigger than myself. You. He gestured at Mike's ledger, which Brett had laid on a nearby table. You hurt vulnerable people for profit. You turned my daughter's mother into an addict to control her. And you broke my little girl's arm because she dared to stand up to you. It was an accident. Mike's voice cracked. I was drunk, I didn't mean. You put your hands on a 12-year-old child and twisted her arm until the bone snapped. There's no accident in that. That's deliberate violence against someone a third your size who couldn't fight back. Clayton stood, walking slowly around the chair. But we're going to come back to Charlotte. Right now, I want to know about your loan sharking operation. Start talking. Mike's resistance crumbled over the next hour. He spilled everything. How he'd started small, lending $50 here and there to neighbors, then expanding as he realized how easy it was to trap people in debt cycles. How he'd used Graciella's house as a front, her reputation as a nice lady in a good neighborhood providing cover. How he'd gradually gotten her hooked on pills, mixing them with alcohol until she was dependent, malleable, unable to question what he was doing. The payment alternatives were exactly what Clayton had feared. Sexual coercion, forcing women who couldn't pay to degrade themselves in exchange for temporarily forgiveness of debt. Mike had recordings, kept as insurance in case anyone went to the police. By the time Mike finished, Clayton felt something he'd only experienced a handful of times in his career: pure, undiluted hatred for another human being. This wasn't a soldier fighting for a cause, or even a terrorist driven by ideology. This was a predator who'd systematically destroyed lives for pocket change and personal pleasure. "One more question," Clayton said. "The night you broke Charlotte's arm. Walk me through it. Every detail." Mike swallowed hard, his eyes red-rimmed. "Graciela was upset about losing her job. She'd been drinking since noon. I gave her some pills to calm her down, but she kept crying, saying she was a failure, a bad mother. It was annoying, pathetic. Charlotte came down and told me to leave her mother alone, said I was making everything worse. She got in my face, this little brat acting like she had any authority." Clayton's hands clenched, but his face remained impassive. "I told her to go to her room. She refused, said she was calling you. I grabbed her arm to take the phone, and she pulled away, so I twisted it to make her let go. I heard it snap, but I thought she was just being dramatic. Kids cry over nothing." Mike's voice took on a wheedling tone. "I didn't mean to actually break it. You have to believe me. It happened so fast. And when she was crying, saying she could see the bone, begging for help." Mike looked away. "I thought she was exaggerating. Graciela was passed out. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking clearly." "No," Clayton said. "You were thinking very clearly. You knew exactly what you'd done, and you knew that if Charlotte got medical help, there would be questions. So you stayed, you made sure Graciela couldn't help, and you hoped my daughter would just suffer in silence." He turned to Brett. "Get everything documented. Names, addresses, amounts, dates. Contact every person on that list and offer them full debt forgiveness in exchange for statements about Mike's operation. Use the foundation account." Brett nodded. Clayton had set up a charitable foundation years ago, funded by inheritance money from his father. It was designed to help military families, but it could be repurposed for this. "What foundation?" Mike asked, confused. Clayton ignored him. "Simon," he called out. Pitts appeared in the doorway. "I need you to reach out to Russell Cotton at Justice. Tell him we have evidence of a large-scale predatory lending operation involving drug trafficking and sexual exploitation. I want immunity deals for anyone who cooperates, and I want every single victim compensated." "On it," Simon said, disappearing again. "Wait," Mike said, panic rising in his voice. You said you weren't cops, that this wasn't official." "I lied," Clayton said simply. "Some of this is going through official channels. Your victims deserve justice, and they're going to get it. Every woman you coerced, every family you trapped in debt, every person you exploited, they're going to see you prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." He leaned close to Mike's ear. "But the official channels don't know about Charlotte. That's between you and me." "I'll testify," Mike said desperately. "I'll give you everything. Everyone I worked with, every detail. Just don't. Please. I have information. I can help you." "You don't have anything I need," Clayton said. "In about 6 hours, federal agents are going to raid Graciela's house and find your operation. They'll seize your records, your cash, your equipment. They'll arrest your associates and build a case that will put you away for 15 to 20 years. You'll be charged with loan sharking, drug trafficking, sexual assault, and child abuse." Mike's face crumbled. "But you're going to kill me." Clayton smiled again, that same cold smile. "No, Mike, I'm not going to kill you. That would be too easy. I'm going to do something much worse. I'm going to make sure you live a very long life in a very specific place." He nodded to Brett, who pulled out a phone and made a call. "Cameron? It's Brett Walton. Remember that favor you owed Clayton? Yeah, we're calling in. We need a transfer arranged. Priority 1, maximum security. Federal Protection Wing. Absolutely no possibility of early release or transfer appeals. Subject is a child predator and sex offender with multiple victims. I'm sending you the full file now." Mike's eyes widened in horror as he understood. No, please, not there. Those places, what they do to people like me." "People like you," Clayton repeated. "Child abusers. Rapists. Yeah, Mike, I know exactly what happens to people like you in maximum security federal prisons. And I know Cameron Brady. He's the warden at USP Terre Haute. He's going to make sure you're in general population, not protective custody. He's going to make sure every inmate knows exactly what you did. And he's going to make absolutely certain that you serve every single day of your sentence, alive and aware. Mike started crying, great heaving sobs. Please, please, I'll do anything. There's nothing you can offer me that I want, Clayton said, standing. Except this. Every morning when you wake up in that cell, every time you hear footsteps in the corridor, every moment of fear and pain and desperation you feel for the rest of your life, I want you to remember Charlotte. Remember her crying on the phone, her arm broken, begging for help. Remember that you did that to a child. And remember that this, all of this, is because you thought you could hurt someone I love and face no consequences. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Mike, Charlotte's going to make a full recovery. She's going to live with me now, in a real home, safe and protected. She's going to play soccer again, get straight A's, maybe become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever she wants to be. She's going to have a beautiful life, surrounded by people who actually care about her. And you'll never see her again. You'll spend the next 20 years in a concrete box, knowing that she's out there being happy, being loved, being everything you try to break. Mike's sobs followed them out of the room. In the hallway, Brett clapped Clayton on the shoulder. That was cold, brother. He deserves worse, Clayton said. But Charlotte doesn't deserve to have her father in prison for murder. This way, he suffers, the victims get justice, and I get to be there for my daughter. What about Graciela? Clayton pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages from the psychiatric facility. They're recommending long-term inpatient treatment, dual diagnosis program for addiction and depression. It'll take months, maybe years. And Charlotte's custody? Emergency petition filed this morning. Judge Kara Randall is handling it. She's seen the medical reports, the evidence of Graciela's condition, Charlotte's statement about the abuse. She's granting me full temporary custody pending Graciela's recovery. If Graciela successfully completes treatment and stays clean, we'll revisit shared custody. If not, he shrugged. Charlotte stays with me permanently. Brett studied his friend's face. You could have killed him. I wouldn't have stopped you. I know. But Charlotte needs her father, not a ghost haunted by vengeance. This way, I get to tuck her in at night, help her with homework, watch her grow up. Mike gets to rot in a cage. It's a fair trade. They walked out into the morning sunlight. Clayton took a deep breath, feeling like he'd been holding it for hours. I need to get back to the hospital. Charlotte's being discharged at 3. Want me to handle the official coordination with justice? Please. And Brett, thank you. For everything. For getting there in time. For keeping your head. For helping me do this the right way. Brett grinned. That's what partners are for. Besides, wait until you get my bill for the knee surgery. That's going to sting. Despite everything, Clayton laughed. It felt good, human. He'd been in darkness so long, doing things that lived in shadows, that he'd almost forgotten what it felt like to fight for something purely good. Charlotte was good, protecting her, ensuring her future, giving her the life she deserved. That was good. Mike Hamilton had made a fatal mistake. He'd thought Clayton was just another absent father, too wrapped up in his work to notice or care what happened to his family. He thought he could hurt Charlotte without consequences. He'd been wrong, and now he would spend the rest of his life learning exactly how wrong he'd been. 3 months later, Clayton stood in the kitchen of his townhouse in Arlington, helping Charlotte with her algebra homework. Her cast had come off 2 weeks ago, and she'd jumped straight back into soccer practice with a determination that made his heart swell with pride. I don't get why we need to find X, she complained, chewing on her pencil. When am I ever going to use this? When you're calculating mission trajectories, Clayton said, deadpan. She looked up at him, eyes narrowed. I'm not joining the CIA, Dad. Oh, what happened to following in the old man's footsteps? You're retired now. Your footsteps lead to the couch and back to the kitchen for snacks. Clayton laughed, ruffling her hair. She swatted at him, but smiled. These ordinary moments of teenage sass and homework frustration was everything he'd fought for. His phone buzzed. A text from Brett. Sentencing today. 25 years. No parole. Judge threw the book at him. How's Charlie? Clayton typed back. Happy. Healthy. That's all that matters. Graciela had been in treatment for 60 days now, making slow but steady progress. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. She'd written Charlotte letters, apologizing, explaining, promising to do better. Charlotte read them, but hadn't responded yet. That was okay. Healing took time. Dad! Charlotte looked up from her homework. Did you hear about Uncle Mike? Clayton tensed. They hadn't discussed Mike since that first day at the hospital. What about him? Sarah Mendez, her mom, was one of the people he was loaning money to. Sarah said her mom got a check in the mail for $10,000, paying off everything they owed and then some, from some foundation. Was that you? Clayton considered lying, then decided his daughter deserved the truth. Yeah, that was me. Charlotte was quiet for a moment. Then she came around the table and hugged him tight. You're a good person, Daddy. He held her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. I try to be, for you. She pulled back, looking at him with those serious gray eyes. Uncle Mike's in prison, isn't he? Yes. Good. No hesitation, no guilt. Just simple certainty. He hurt a lot of people. He deserved it. He did, Clayton agreed. But more importantly, the people he hurt are getting help now. They're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. I know. She smiled, returning to her homework. Because I have you. Clayton watched her bent over the algebra problems, this fierce, smart, resilient girl he'd somehow helped create, and felt something settle in his chest. For 18 years, he'd worked in shadows, eliminating threats to national security, protecting abstract concepts like freedom and democracy. It had felt important, necessary. But this, protecting one girl, ensuring she grew up safe and loved and whole. This was the most important mission he'd ever undertaken. And unlike the murky moral compromises of his previous work, this was crystal clear. Charlotte was innocent, and anyone who tried to harm her would face consequences that no amount of pleading or bargaining could avoid. Mike Hamilton had learned that lesson. So had anyone else who might have thought Clayton Huff was too far away, too detached, too invested in his career to notice what happened to his family. They'd been wrong. And Charlotte, working through her math problems at the kitchen table, safe and secure in a home where she was cherished, was living proof that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys won. 20 minutes later, Brett called. Turn on the news. Clayton flipped on the television. A reporter stood outside the federal courthouse, describing a major bust of a loan sharking and sex trafficking operation that had victimized dozens of families across Northern Virginia. Mike Hamilton's face flashed on the screen, followed by his sentencing details. 25 years. The judge called it one of the most egregious cases of predatory exploitation she'd seen in her career, the reporter said. Hamilton showed no remorse, and multiple victims testified about the trauma he'd inflicted. In an unusual move, the judge also ordered Hamilton to pay restitution totaling $750,000 to his victims, though authorities say his assets amount to less than $100,000. Charlotte glanced at the TV, then back at her homework. 25 years, huh? He'll be old when he gets out. If he makes it that long, Clayton said quietly. She looked at him, understanding dawning. Prison's dangerous for people like him. Very. Good, she said again, and returned to her algebra. Clayton turned off the TV. The official justice was done. Mike would spend the next quarter century in a federal prison, surrounded by violent offenders who had their own code about men who hurt children. Cameron Brady had assured Clayton that Mike's protective custody requests had been lost in paperwork, and that his cell assignment was in a particularly rough wing. What happened after that was out of Clayton's hands. He delivered Mike to the system, ensured his guilt was documented and prosecuted, and stepped away. If Mike faced rough justice from his fellow inmates, well, that was just the natural consequence of his crimes. Clayton's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a different number, his old commanding officer. Huff. Clayton, heard about your family situation. How are you holding up? Better, sir. My daughter's with me now. Full custody. Good. That's good. Listen, I know you requested early retirement after the Afghanistan extraction, but I wanted to run something by you. Instructorship position at the farm. Training the next generation of operators. Stable hours, no deployments, excellent benefits. You'd be teaching tradecraft, tactical operations, decision-making under pressure. The work you've been doing for 18 years, but you'd be home every night. Clayton looked at Charlotte, still focused on her homework, her tongue poking out slightly as she concentrated. Is the position in Langley? Williamsburg, actually. 50 miles from D.C. Good schools in the area, quiet neighborhoods. A lot of agency families live there. I need to relocate Charlotte. She'd be closer to better schools, better resources, and you'd be doing meaningful work without the operational risks. Think about it. Clayton thought about it for approximately 3 seconds. I'm in. When do I start? Month from now. Gives you time to get settled. After the call ended, Clayton sat down next to Charlotte. How would you feel about moving? New house, new school, but I'd be around a lot more. Her face lit up. Really? You're staying home? I'm teaching at a government facility. The work's classified, but the hours are regular. I'd be there for dinner every night, help with homework, come to all your soccer games. She threw her arms around him. Yes. 1,000 times yes. He held her, feeling the weight of the past 3 months lifting. Mike Hamilton was in prison, facing the consequences of his actions. Graciela was getting help. Charlotte was safe and happy. And Clayton had a future that didn't involve disappearing into war zones for months at a time. It wasn't the ending he'd expected when he'd gotten that terrified phone call from Afghanistan. But it was better than anything he'd imagined. A second chance to be the father Charlotte deserved, to build a life that wasn't defined by shadows and secrets and moral compromises. Outside, the sun was setting over Arlington, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Charlotte went back to her homework, humming to herself. Clayton started making dinner, something simple, pasta and salad, but made with care, with attention, with love. In a federal prison 2 hours away, Mike Hamilton sat in his cell, contemplating 25 years of consequences. In a treatment facility across town, Graciela Hamilton worked through therapy sessions, trying to rebuild herself from the wreckage of addiction and abuse. And in a townhouse kitchen, a father and daughter worked through algebra problems and planned their future together. Justice, Clayton thought, wasn't always served in the way people expected. Sometimes it was cold and swift. Sometimes it was long and grinding. But one way or another, if you hurt the people he loved, justice would find you. He'd make absolutely certain of that.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.